Good morning. Today on Spotlight, the future of our economy and educational funding for Michigan in the long shadow of the COVID-19 pandemic. My guest, Congressman Andy Levin, Democrat representing Michigan's 9th District. And later on our Sunday morning program, I'll check in with the co-chairs of Vote Safe Michigan. It's a bipartisan coalition. Former Republican Congressman Dr. John Joe Swartz and Michigan's Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson, a Democrat. It's Sunday, June the 21st, Father's Day. I'm Chuck Stokes, and this is Spotlight. Congressman Levin, thank you for joining us today on Spotlight from Washington, D.C. You're doing okay?
Yes, Chuck, how are you?
Doing just fine. Thanks for joining us. Let's just jump right in. A lot on our plate today. Let's start with education. Governor Whitmer announced a few days ago that schools here in Michigan would reopen in the fall with safety and social distancing and all of those types of things. A lot of people were glad to hear that, but a lot of superintendents are saying, yeah, sorta, but we don't have any money, and you guys haven't done the state budget yet, and we're still waiting to see what the Senate's going to do and if we're going to get any real serious money from Washington. You are vice chair of the House Education and Labor Committee. You've been, just in the depth of all of that. Bring us up to date. What do you think will happen?
Yeah, well, that's a really great question, Chuck. I mean, the superintendents are right to be concerned. In the House, we passed the HEROES Act in May that provides not only $500 billion for state budgets, which is one of the main sources of the school budgets. Michigan would get $7 billion in 2020 and $6 billion in 2021 from the HEROES Act, but also $90 billion in direct aid for education. So we really do need the Senate to get to work. And, if they want to do something a little different, hey, that's the sausage making, right, Chuck? But let's get this done because, as you know, school leaders plan right now for the fall. They don't plan in September. They've got to plan in June.
Well, you're absolutely right. Most of them are supposed to have their budgets done by July 1. Obviously, that's probably not going to happen. What seems to be the biggest concern on the Senate side?
Well, our two senators have both said they're ready to go and to pass this kind of aid for our kids and our educators in our states. Mitch McConnell started out by saying that if the Senate, the states were concerned about their budgets, they should declare bankruptcy. I mean, what do you even say about that? Economists all across the spectrum, from the farthest right to the farthest left, say that if we want a real Great Depression, we'll let the states, struggle like that. Yeah. So I think that the Senate will come to its senses and get to work, but I hope it's soon. That's all I can tell you, because our state and local governments need to be able to plan.
Is it pretty clear that without serious money coming from the federal government to not just our state, but all states that have been hit hard by this COVID-19, that we will be in a very, very deep hole in terms of education, and that will impact potentially the quality of education?
A very deep hole, Chuck, a very deep hole. Preschool, pre-K, K-12, and higher education. All those budgets are likely to suffer. One of the things we learned from the Great Recession was that we didn't help the state and local governments enough. And you remember how slow the recovery was from the Great Recession?
Yes.
We've learned that one of the main reasons for that was that the layoffs that occurred in the public sector at the state and local level, including teachers and other school workers, were too slow to be turned around because they didn't have the money. So we've got to get this going, just for the sake of the economy.
You've expressed concern over statements that Secretary Betsy DeVos has made in regards to the funding of education. You say that there's a difference between that is not equal across the board. Bring us up to date on your concern about her statement.
I mean, Chuck, here we are having a national moment of awakening on structural racism, on the impacts on children of color that are different. She's saying that she wants to divert aid that the Congress, both the Senate and the House, Republicans and Democrats, this is law already passed, right? This isn't the next package. We pass money to give to the public schools to help them, and she wants to divert it to private schools and says all children are impacted by this. She wants to do it regardless of income. So it would basically be diverting a lot of money from public schools serving poor kids, English language learners, kids with learning disabilities, towards private schools, regardless of how wealthy they are. It's bad public policy, and it's part of her decades-long ideological crusade to undermine universal public education, which is what her life's work has been.
All right, Congressman, I need to slip a little break in here. We'll come right back and we'll turn our attention to jobs in Michigan's economy. We'll be right back with Congressman Levin. Stay with us. Congressman Andy Levin, you represent a district that stretches from Oakland County to Macomb County. In the heart of your district is Warren and places like that. Macomb County has always been known as sort of this bread and butter county. They vote with their pocketbooks. Obama won it when he was running for president, and then Donald Trump won it, I should say, when he was president. So it flips back and forth. I remember Bill Clinton saying, it's the economy, stupid. Is this election going to boil down to the economy? And we are seeing ads on television every day, bombarded on all the television stations, from Donald Trump saying, I've brought this economy back.
You know, Chuck, it's really hard to say that you brought the economy back when we have a higher unemployment rate than we ever had during the Great Recession. It's hard to say that you brought the economy back when manufacturing workers in Macomb County, as well as elsewhere in Michigan and throughout the country, have seen their jobs go to Mexico, to China, to other places, and he promised not one more job would leave Michigan. Remember that? And go look at the Warren plant, you know, the GM Warren facility, where some small numbers of people are making masks, which is wonderful, but that's shut down.
What are you hearing when in your district? What are you hearing from constituents when you come back to the district and you're having your town hall meetings? Are they saying, yeah, I feel good about where we are in terms of Michigan and our economy right now?
No. People, here's the deal, Chuck. Really, for 40 years, working people have gotten the short end of the stick on tax policy, on trade policy. And do working people think that Trump's new USMCA is going to be a big turnaround from NAFTA? No, they don't. Look at what's happening in Mexico right now. After USMCA was passed, workers are being forced to go into factories in unsafe conditions. They've got no rights. They're not able to form unions. And as long as wages are super low and workers have no rights in Mexico, our jobs are going to keep going there. Donald Trump has not delivered any of that. We've passed the Raise the Wage Act in the House so that everybody would make $15 an hour or more. So there's a lot of things we can do to raise the standard of living for workers in Macomb County. That's really all they want, Chuck, is to have the American dream come back into sight. And we know how to do that. The House has passed 250 bills that are sitting on Mitch McConnell's desk. He won't take them up.
Congressman, is it time for major reform within the United Auto Workers, given all of the controversy that we've seen?
I think that the leadership of the auto workers are working with the authorities who've uncovered this corruption that's been so distressing to all of us who see, the UAW in the past has been a paragon of uprightness, and this is really distressing to see. And they are making major reforms. They need to make major reforms, and I think they're going down that road. So
can they be trusted to do it within just the UAW, or does there need to be an outside force?
The U.S. attorney, if he's talking about putting the UAW into federal trusteeship, do you know how long the Teamsters have been in trust? I can't even remember. Do you? It's been decades that the Teamsters, that is not healthy for American workers to have the U.S. government. At that time, way back decades ago, did the Teamsters need reform? Yes, they did. There's nothing like that kind of level of systematic corruption in the UAW, and we don't need the government taking over unions in that way. I stand with the workers of the UAW. And it's important to all Michiganders and all Americans that that proud union is independent, democratic, and strong.
All right. Congressman Andy Levin, thank you so much for joining us from Washington. There are a lot more questions, but time is always our worst enemy. We will get you back and make sure that we tackle some of these other issues because you're working on a ton of them there in Washington, D.C. Thank you so much and stay safe.
Thanks. You too, Chuck. Take care of yourself.
All right, same to you. And coming up on Spotlight, Secretary of State Benson and former Congressman Joe Schwartz. They'll be talking about Vote Safe Michigan. We'll be right back. Stay with us. And welcome back to Spotlight. Joining me now is the Secretary of State for Michigan, Jocelyn Benson, and over in Battle Creek, Michigan, Dr. John Joe Schwartz, former congressman from the Battle Creek area. Vote Safe Michigan. You two are serving as the co-chairs. Madam Secretary, in a nutshell, what are the goals?
To make sure every citizen has the confidence that when they vote, their vote will be counted and the results of our elections will be accurate and every aspect of our elections will be secure.
All right. Joe Schwartz, we have so much partisanship. I don't have to tell you, you know it, you've lived it. This is a bipartisan coalition, both here in Michigan, but also on the national level, because on the national level, we've got the co-chairs with former Governor Granholm from our state, and of course, Tom Ridge, a Republican from Pennsylvania. So we've got D's and R's in this. Why was it important for you to be involved in this, and what do you make of this in the midst of a very partisan election year?
Well, it's something that had to be done. It's too bad it took this long to do it. Voter suppression is part of our history, not only decades and decades, probably a couple of centuries, and there's all kinds of ways to suppress the vote. And one of the points we need to make in this is we're going to make sure, as the Secretary says, that it's safe to vote, that voting facilities are there. People need not be afraid for their health, especially if they vote and they want to vote. All kinds of reasons that people who are bona fide, qualified voters should be encouraged to vote. We don't want any disincentives. We want people to be incented to vote.
Madam Secretary, you are probably constantly watching various independent polls in terms of voter habits. What are you seeing from these various polls that have been taken in terms of what the people want, particularly in the backdrop of COVID-19?
Yeah, we are in a time of great uncertainty in so many ways. And so what this effort and what my work is really about is making sure people have certainty about how to express their voice and cast their ballot in our upcoming August and November elections. And what the data shows is, and this is reflected in how we got here in our state with a vote by mail right for our citizens enacted by citizens in 2018, the data shows that by a 2-to-1 margin, in some places even greater, people want the option to vote by mail. And so we're working to deliver that option safely and securely for our citizens and really be a model for the rest of the country on how to operate safe, secure, accessible elections in the midst of a pandemic. And that also means making sure you have a safe in-person option as well. In precincts where there's no crowding, there are no lines, where resources are effectively allocated to minimize that type of crowding, where there's social distancing in place, where everyone has PPE, masks, gloves, and the like. And so that we're working to basically make sure our citizens have that choice to vote in person or vote by mail, and that they have the certainty that whatever choice they make, their vote will be counted and will be secure.
I know I saw something on social media not terribly long ago when your applications went out, or at least the notice letting everyone know that you can vote via absentee if you choose to do so, or you can vote via mail. There were people in the Grand Rapids area burning up that application that you sent out, or at least that communication, which was basically saying, we don't trust it.
Or maybe they were celebrating the fact that you can now apply online. You don't need paper to get your application to vote by mail. You can just go to our website.
Well, that's one way of looking at it. Okay.
So, maybe. But yeah, look, it's a new system. We know that there's a lot of uncertainty, but we know also that states have been allowing citizens to vote by mail for decades. that fraud is infinitesimal. In the 5 elections we've had so far, 3 local last year and 2 this year, we have not seen any examples of fraud and people voting by mail because we
Right.
have time-tested security provisions in place, like signature verification, to protect against that and find it when it does occur. And I'll say this, if someone breaks the law and commits voter fraud, we'll find it and we will prosecute. We won't stand for it in our state.
Congressman, you have served as an elected representative, but you're also a medical doctor by profession. What advice would you give to Secretary Benson in terms of the poll facilities for those who do want to go vote in person to make sure that not only those voting, but also the workers are safe in COVID-19?
Use all of the public health practices that we've been taught to use and are using now. Masks, social distancing, make certain the polling places are swept down, clean, sprayed. One thing we can't do is start closing polling places. We've got to have the customary polling places open, but cared for in such a way that people who choose to vote at their usual polling place have confidence that they can go there safely, not endanger their health, and vote. Second part is, as the Secretary says, people who want to vote by mail, they should be able to vote by mail. No questions asked.
That's not a concern, the voter fraud, to you?
Voter fraud has never been a concern to me. A little glitch here and a little glitch there. Somebody's
Do you
ballot
feel it
gets
favors one party over
tossed.
another?
No. Any voter fraud, I would not call it fraud. Do I think an occasional clerical error is made at a polling place? Well, of course, that's human nature, occasional. But there's no hard evidence of any voter fraud really that's arisen, and some states actually on the East Coast have actually looked into it, and they found none. I mean, we have not found any significant voter fraud in this country for decades and decades. I mean, I don't want to go back to the 19th century. Who knows? But we're not in the 19th century now.
Right.
So there's no evidence of any significant voter fraud.
All right, let me take a quick break. I'll hurry right back with a few more questions to the both of you. Stay with us. Madam Secretary, bring us up to date quickly if you can. We've heard about the Redistricting Commission. We know that you've sent notices out that people could volunteer to be considered to be a part of this. Last thing I saw on that is that you had an overwhelming number of people interested in this, correct?
Yeah, so this is Michigan's first Citizens Districting Commission where citizens can draw congressional and legislative district lines. The application process has closed. It stopped on June 1st, and amazingly, over 7,500 people, close to 8,000 people applied. And in that group, representatives from all of 83 counties were represented. And that was more than 1,000 or 1,500 more than California saw in applications. And that's a state 4 times our size. So we're really excited to see so many people apply. And I think that bodes well to the type of commission we'll ultimately see selected.
And we should probably, with August and November coming up, because of the last proposition, Prop 3, that passed overwhelmingly in this state, one of the byproducts of that was that people can register to vote up through Election Day, correct?
Yes, you do have the option to register to vote on Election Day in your local clerk's office. We also have online voter registration right now in Michigan, so you can go to michigan.gov/vote and check or confirm or register to vote online. And we want people to do that ahead of time so that on Election Day, all you have to do is focus on voting. But certainly everyone has that right to register to vote up to and on Election Day now in our state.
Dr. Schwartz, do you think this is going to be a historic year in terms of record turnout for voting, and particularly
Yes.
in Michigan?
Yes, I do, because we have made it possible for people to vote and not take a step backward and say, God, I just don't want to go through this. I want to vote, but I don't want to go through all of this. And I want to vote absentee, and I don't want to go through all the things you used to have to go through. Basically, you can register, you can vote absentee, you can vote by mail, you can do all of the things, you can do them easily. And I think Michigan is way out ahead on this. I'm happy that we are. And I think voter turnout, even with our ill-placed primary in August, awful time for a primary,
Yeah.
but with the general election in November, I think we will have excellent voter turnout. We'll move on to the 2022 elections. We will have reapportionment and redistricting. We're probably going to lose one seat in Congress, so these lines are going to be drawn a little differently, but at least we will have a bipartisan commission to draw them and draw them fairly, and not draw them in a way that is absolutely gerrymandered and represents voter suppression, which is what we're trying to fight against.
Congressman, I certainly can't let you get away without talking about this historic Supreme Court decision this week. You served in Congress. You took what some will consider back then a courageous stand as a Republican on this issue. Some will say it was a foolish stand. It just depends on your perspective. Do you feel vindicated now by the Supreme Court's decision?
Vindication probably isn't the right word. They did the right thing. The 6 justices that voted in the majority did the right thing, and LGBTQ people should be included in civil rights legislation in the Civil Rights Act. There's no question in my mind. It's the right thing to do.
And Secretary Benson certainly wants you to weigh in on this. You are a former dean of the Wayne State University Law School, so law is steep in your background.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great decision, a long overdue decision, and really a reflection of the principles our country was founded on of equality and justice for all. And so it was great to see the Supreme Court make the right decision, particularly in Pride Month, particularly the time where, we often, where I think we all, those of us who are equality advocates really were welcomed a victory. It was a welcome victory at a time when it was needed.
Is there any room left in the Republican Party for moderates such as yourself?
My answer would be this. Both parties have gone, the Republicans to the right, the Democrats to the left, a little farther than I would like to see them go. We moderates are kind of a dying breed. I hope to see more moderates come into politics because the best legislation, the best governance is by people who are slightly to the left of center, slightly to the right of center, and can communicate with each other, which is the way, quite frankly, it used to be in the Michigan legislature and in the Congress, and in many ways is no more. So I have hope for moderates, and I believe in time there will be more moderates elected to office.
Congressman Joe Swartz and Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson, thank you so much for joining us today on Spotlight. I'm Chuck Stokes. We'll be back next week with more newsmakers in the Spotlight. We hope you have a great week, and please stay safe and happy Father's Day.